of the news, read by Lucy Crofton and Sergei Rudin. First, the headlines. Prime Minister Khrushchev has congratulated Senator Kennedy on his election to the presidency of the United States. We hope, he wrote, that during your term in office, the relations between our two countries will take the course they followed during Franklin Roosevelt's time.
Opposition members of the British Parliament sharply criticized a new statement by Prime Minister Macmillan that the government will not be able to control the use of nuclear weapons by American submarines.
Those are the headlines. Here now are the details. Prime Minister Khrushchev has congratulated Senator John Kennedy on his election to the presidency of the United States. We hope, he wrote, that during your term in office, the relations between our two countries will take the course they followed during Franklin Roosevelt's time, suiting the fundamental interests not only of the Soviet and American peoples, but also of all humanity, which longs for riddance of the threat of another war. Many people look towards the United States and the Soviet Union, since the destiny of universal peace depends greatly on the state of American-Soviet relations. We have declared and declare now, Mr. Khrushchev pointed out, that we respect the gifted, peace-loving people of the United States and are ready to work for the most friendly ties between them and between the Soviet and American governments. We are convinced that there are no obstacles that could not be overcome to maintain and consolidate peace. For this goal, we, on our part, are ready to continue efforts to solve the urgent problem of disarmament, to solve the German problem through speediest conclusion of a peace treaty, and to reach agreement on other issues, the solution of which would lead to relaxation and improvement of the entire international atmosphere. All steps in this direction will meet the full understanding and support of the Soviet government. In conclusion, Mr. Khrushchev wished Mr. Kennedy fruitful work at his responsible post as President of the United States and prosperity to the American people.
A big meeting in New York last night celebrated the 43rd anniversary of the Russian Revolution and the 25th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic ties between the Soviet Union and the United States. Ms. Jessica Smith, editor of the New World Review, said in a speech that Prime Minister Khrushchev's visit to the United States last year had revealed mankind's hopes of lasting peace among nations. Ms. Smith hoped the time would come when the White House would take the opinions of the American people into consideration. She said that would mark a new era in American-Soviet relations. The writer Shirley Graham Du Bois welcomed the historical declaration against colonialism the Soviet Union introduced in the General Assembly. Mr. Jack Spiegel, leader of the Shoemakers Union, and Father Stephen Fishman, who were among the speakers, noted the Soviet Union's aspiration for peace. They sharply criticized the race for nuclear arms conducted by the State Department and the Pentagon and urged friendlier ties between the Soviet Union and the United States.
The parliament in Kivu, one of the 6 provinces in the Congo, has once again voted confidence in the central government of Prime Minister Lumumba, says the Yugoslav newspaper Borba in a dispatch from Leopoldville. In Kasai province, too, members of the administration have come out openly for the lawful Congolese government. In Leopoldville province, Prime Minister Cleophas Komitatu charged President Kasavubu with seeking to set up a government that would serve the imperialists. Prime Minister Komitatu said the majority of Congolese will never consent to the dictatorial regime Mr. Kasavubu wants to impose on them. If the United Nations does not take heed of this, it will be turning the Congo into another Algeria. Mr. Komitatu declared that Mr. Kasavubu has no right to speak in the United Nations as a representative of the people and government of the Congo.
Opposition members of the British Parliament were incensed when Prime Minister Macmillan told the House of Commons that the government would not be able to control the use of nuclear weapons by American submarines. Britain's only rights in the matter are based on a general agreement for preliminary consultation, if possible.
The Italian Communist Party has gained a big victory in local elections. Party leader Palmiro Togliatti stated in the newspaper Unità that the number of votes cast for the Communists increased more than 100,000. This is the largest percentage of increase among the major parties. Signor Togliatti pointed out that the Communists gained and the voting Christian Democrats lost almost 1 million votes. We call this a tremendous advance for democratic and anti-fascist tendencies.
The National Legislature in the United Arab Republic has declared support of the national liberation struggle waged by the Algerian people. Foreign Minister Mahmoud Farzi declared in a statement that in its war in Algeria, France is supported by the same allies who helped her in the 1956 aggression against Egypt. Mr. Farzi stressed that the Arabs will not lay down their arms until they gain complete victory. The legislature urged the Arab League to insist on the withdrawal of NATO armed forces from all war bases in Arab countries. A spokesman of the Algerian Provisional Government in Tunis, meanwhile, maintained that the NATO countries have long been active in the colonial war in Algeria. For 6 years, the French imperialists have been enjoying extensive and destructive backing by NATO in all spheres, diplomatic, military, and financial. Without this support, the French would have lost their war 3 years ago, the spokesman said. The imperialist army can only replenish its supplies and equipment thanks to NATO and the United States.
A plane belonging to the United States Air Force, marked AB 133-358, has been buzzing a Soviet scientific research ship, Khrushchev, in the Arabian Sea. The plane circled low over the vessel for 15 minutes Monday. The night before, a warplane buzzed the ship 5 times, spotlighting it with projectors. Khrushchev is now on an expedition in the Indian Ocean under the International Geophysical Cooperation Program sponsored by the United Nations. 14 countries are working under the program.
200,000 workers were thrown out of their jobs in the United States last month, raising the number of totally unemployed to 6.4% of the entire number of workers. This is the greatest unemployment in the United States since the economic recession of 1958.
The Soviet National Parliament will begin its next session December the 20th. It has also been announced that the Russian Federation, the largest of the 15 major republics comprising the Soviet Union, will elect its judges on December the 18th.
The Cuban official economic mission of the Soviet Union, headed by President Guevara of the National Bank, came back to Moscow from Leningrad today. They continued business talks in the Ministry of Foreign Trade and Soviet Foreign Trade Organization.
A prominent American, Mr. Robert Downing, president of the City Investing Company, left Moscow today. He visited the Soviet Union as a guest of the USSR Committee for Foreign Cultural Ties.
The Soviet team has won the World Chess Championship for the 5th time. The competitions ended today in Leipzig, Democratic Germany. The USSR won 34 points out of 44 possible. The United States came in 2nd and Yugoslavia 3rd.
And now to round out the news, here are the headlines once again. Prime Minister Khrushchev has congratulated Senator Kennedy on his election to the presidency of the United States. We hope, he wrote, that during your German office, the relations between our two countries will take the course they followed during Franklin Roosevelt's time.
Opposition members of the British Parliament sharply criticized a new statement by Prime Minister Macmillan that the government will not be able to control the use of nuclear weapons by American submarines.
And those are the news headlines from Radio Moscow.
And now here is comment about the presidential elections by observer Alexander Alexandrov. Here is what he writes. Vice President Nixon of the Republican Party, now in power, has been defeated in the elections, and the Democrat, Senator John Kennedy, will run the White House now for the next 4 years. The significance of this event extends farther than within the bounds of America's internal affairs. The whole world is far from indifferent to the question of who stands at the helm of state of one of the countries which to a great extent decide the course of important world events. Now, what is the international significance of the American presidential elections? For one thing, the people of the United States, the major Western power, have decided to end the 8 long years of leadership by the Republican Party in the person of Mr. Eisenhower and Mr. Nixon. The Republicans have revealed themselves as short of action consisted of so-called brinkmanship. It is well known what results this policy brought both the Americans and the other nations. The clouds of war darkened over the world's horizons. Naturally, such a course failed to satisfy public opinion. Outwardly, this has been manifested in the fact that the American people refused to trust Republican Mr. Nixon. But that's only outwardly. It was not an individual whom the American voters defeated, but the people who personify Cold War and the race for armaments. I might mention many reactionary measures by the Eisenhower-Nixon administration in home affairs, which also turned the voter away to the Democrats, but it's clear that the main thing in the elections was foreign affairs, writes Alexander Alexandrov. One leading American paper has written that it was questions of war and peace that took first place, especially following Mr. Khrushchev's work in the General Assembly. Thus, the Americans have voted against Cold War. But it goes without saying that it's only half the job to show your non-confidence in a pure policy. The policy has to be substituted by a new, constructive course, which not in words, but in deeds, would help reinforce world peace. Certain advanced measures in this direction have already been made by the Democratic leaders. Towards the end of the election campaign, Mr. Kennedy declared himself to be a direct successor to President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who did so much that was good in the sphere of international cooperation. The war administration has many opportunities to show that its assurances that it will continue the work of the great American president, Mr. Roosevelt, were not election demagogy. There has never been, and is not now, any insoluble problem or distance between the two greatest powers on earth, the United States and the Soviet Union. Mr. Khrushchev wrote in a message of congratulations to Mr. Kennedy today that there are no obstacles that could not be overcome in maintaining and consolidating the peace. Mr. Khrushchev said, "We have declared and declare now that we respect the gifted, peace-loving people of the United States and are prepared to work for the most friendly ties between them and the Soviet people and between the Soviet and American governments." The result of the elections means that the American voter has said to his new president, "We need action, action, and action to safeguard the peace." The American people expect such action, and all mankind has the right to expect it too. Commentary is by observer Alexander Alexandrov. It came to you from Radio Moscow.